With news of Darksiders 4 likely dropping next month, I wanted to take a step back and tackle one of the biggest unanswered questions in the entire series. Who is the true leader of the Four Horsemen? Now I know everyone has their favorites, but today I want to really dig into the games, comics, interviews, and novels to uncover the cold hard facts. We'll take a closer look at War, Fury, Strife, and Death, examining the strengths and weaknesses of each to see which one of the four is truly the leader of the group. We've already covered who is the strongest in my other videos. Today is just about leadership. Let's get it started. War is an elite warrior by every metric. For many, he is the prototypical horseman, possessing immense skill, brute strength, tactical brilliance, and a massive intimidation factor. Players around the world took control of him in Darksiders 1 and discovered, to their surprise, that he was more than just a mindless bruiser. We were all shocked to see how honorable and controlled a horseman embodying the concept of warfare could be. We saw him stripped of power and status along with his horse during the events of Darksiders, and yet he still persisted through his own resourcefulness, combat prowess, and impossibly high battle IQ. These and the other qualities I've listed here make War one of the best choices to lead the Four Horsemen. That and War just gets it done, whatever it is. It doesn't matter how he's feeling, if he's injured, or even if he doesn't have the powers typically granted by the Charred Council. War will persevere and will achieve victory whatever the cost, and others seem willing to follow him. Throughout Darksiders 1, we see allies rally around War's cause despite having several reasons not to. Makers aid him, angels work alongside him, even demons find themselves temporarily aligned with his goals. He never gained the support through brute force alone. That wouldn't have been enough. He could only inspire confidence through his actions, and that's exactly what he did. All of this culminated in him being the driving force behind the defeat of the Destroyer. With that said, War does have some glaring deficiencies that will give anyone pause when nominating a leader. One of which is that he's somewhat naive. This makes sense when you consider that he is the youngest of the four. This naivete unfortunately lends itself to an even bigger deficiency, which is that War is loyal to a fault, especially when it comes to the Charred Council. His unwavering loyalty to them and to their laws allowed him to be blinded to, or at least allow their various misdeeds. These traits have seemingly lessened over time from the events of Darksiders Genesis to the end of Darksiders 1, so he's at least smartened up a bit compared to where he was when he started. But it does show a history of being easily manipulated. Those traits will not outright disqualify War from leadership, but he possesses one fatal flaw that might. We've seen in the past that when War reaches his boiling point during combat and gives into that heightened thrill of battle, that he'll completely lose himself in a berserker state. In this state, War can't be reasoned with, and all he wants to do is spill the blood of anyone and everyone around him, even his allies. It took all three of his siblings to contain him before, and at great cost, as Death was forced to permanently sever War's arm as a lasting reminder. This seems to have worked so far, as War has seemingly avoided his berserker state since, but there is still the danger that it might resurface someday. That said, is War the leader of the four? Well, we need to see the qualifications of the others before we make that judgment. If War has the qualities of a battlefield commander, then what about the horsemen many consider the oldest and the wisest of the group? If War is the prototypical horseman, then Death is the one they all look up to. Death is the best of the best. He is the oldest, the wisest, and the most powerful. His knowledge of the arcane is second only to the Crowfather, and so that mixture of combat prowess and knowledge makes him a great all-rounder for most situations, which we get to see in Darksiders 2. In that game, as well as Darksiders Abomination Vault, we also get to see Death's skillful and somewhat unexpected use of diplomacy. Death is also one of the firstborn of the Nephilim, a powerful race of beings created by the demoness Lilith as the perfect binding of angelic and demonic essence. He is far more ancient than even War, Strife, and Fury. As such, he has been in more battles and seen more than each of his remaining siblings probably combined. And because of that, War, Fury, and Strife respect their older brother and at times even fear him. With all that said, Death is definitely considered the leader of the group, right?
Wrong.
Not so fast. Death's resume and power levels looks great, but that alone doesn't make him a great candidate for leader. He actually has some tendencies that will make the Charred Council and his siblings reconsider. Death is a loner by nature and prefers it that way, even on missions that threaten the lives of every being in creation. We've seen this in Darksiders 2 as well as Abomination Vault. In both, Death had opportunities to team with at least one of his siblings, but chose not to for his own personal reasons. This led him to take on additional responsibilities in his missions. He can handle it, of course, but a leader needs to be able to delegate tasks, not do them all himself. It shows he lacks a degree of trust in his younger siblings. This is likely because Death carries a lot of guilt over his role in the destruction of the Nephilim. I believe because of this, and because they are the last remaining 4 of the Nephilim, that Death is often overprotective of his younger siblings, and willing to put himself in danger so that they may avoid it, as seen in Abomination Vault, as well as the Darksiders graphic novel. In his own words, he can handle it. But a good leader can't babysit his subordinates. He must guide them and trust them to do what must be done, despite the risks. Death isn't quite there yet, at least not consistently. And worst of all, Death is secretive and willing to lie to his team and treat them as pawns to accomplish his goals. We saw it with War at Abomination Vault. Again, Death's actions ultimately led to victory, but also led towards premature death. Luckily, it wasn't permanent, but War essentially died without even knowing he was sacrificing his life as a decoy. Death just made the decision for him. This sort of decision making, though vital to Death's plan at the time, could ultimately lead to a lack of faith in Death's leadership. Sure, Death made the tough calls, and his plan resulted in the eradication of the most dangerous weapons in creation. But when you alienate and hurt your allies in the process, these wounds are rarely forgiven, and that trust is hard to rebuild. Experience is vital for a good leader, but it isn't everything. One question we must ask is who wants the position? Because the one horseman who actually wants to be the leader of the 4 is Fury. Fury is an interesting case. We didn't see too much of her before Darksiders 3. Before that, we caught glimpses. A few images in Darksiders 2, and minor features in the graphic novels and Abomination Vault. In those, we saw that she was more or less dependable and loyal to the Charred Council. She also seemed much more level-headed and less prone to anger as she was depicted later. Again, to be fair, she only had a minor supporting role in those stories. In Darksiders 3, we got to see the real Fury, and boy, was she angry. I mean, it makes sense considering her name. I'm not even sure why she seemed so even-tempered in the stories before. Perhaps her name was meant to depict her actions on the battlefield rather than her personality. But since I can only speculate the creator's intentions, I digress. What I didn't expect to see in her new depiction was how immature she was. For a character that's older than dirt, she didn't seem very wise. On top of that, she had a bad case of solipsism, or main character syndrome. Everything with her was me, while belittling everyone around her. And while she had a strong desire to be the leader of the Horsemen, stronger than we've seen from the others, her mentality just didn't match what was needed for that role. Leadership and ego don't really go hand in hand. Confidence, sure, but not ego. The best leaders check that at the door to get things done. I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed with Fury's depiction when I first played Darksiders 3. The Horsemen we played before her were all about duty, honor, loyalty, and sacrifice, and Fury was all about her own selfish desires, including a childlike desire to boss everyone around, including the Charred Council and her brothers. If I were judging Fury solely on the first half of Darksiders 3, she'd be dead last in this discussion, as a child cannot lead much of anything, let alone a group as powerful as the Horsemen. Thankfully, that's not where Fury's story ends. We have even more reference material, along with the second half of Darksiders 3, to give a clearer picture of who she really is, and maybe even where she'll end up in future games in Darksiders media. While prone to anger, her depictions in Abomination Vault, Forbidden Land, and the graphic novel depict her as disciplined, focused, and cooperative. In each depiction, she is usually willing to follow the existing chain of command, whether it be the Charred Council or death. She even keeps the group on task at various points. And in the last half of Darksiders 3, we saw Fury's growth. She was arrogant, egotistical, and emotionally volatile through most of her adventure, but by the end, she learned patience, calmness, and to care about someone other than herself, even beings that she initially thought were worthless. Fury is still somewhat rash, impulsive, and prideful, but she faced her flaws head on thanks to her encounters with each of the sins, and came out better because of it. and the best thing she learned was that the council was not worthy of her loyalty. By the end of her adventure in Darksiders 3, Fury's potential as a leader is there, as she recognizes that she wanted it for the wrong reasons, but she still has a lot to learn. Then there's Strife, the horseman almost nobody would nominate for leadership, and the one least likely to even want it. For curiosity's sake, let's see how he stacks up. Strife is many things, but I don't think anyone would think of him as the leader of the four. Strife seems to take a perpetual backseat and prefers it that way. He is a rebellious freethinker who refuses to play the role of obedient soldier. He is unpredictable, distrustful, and prone to saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. This, of course, puts him on the shit list of just about anybody and everybody he comes across, whether they be ally or enemy. Of course, none of this makes Strife a great leader, but it does make him cool, and I think that works perfectly fine for Strife. He possesses many traits associated with good advisors and intelligence officers, such as a keen eye, the keenest, according to the narrator of Forbidden Land, as well as a distrustful nature and a penchant for pragmatic solutions. His cynicism and attention to detail often allows him to spot flaws in plans that the others may miss, and also allows him to see when he's being played. He's not a blind follower, and if his orders don't align with his own personal code, he will voice his displeasure, often as jokes or sarcastic comments. The downside is that this type of cynicism rarely inspires followers, and while cynics challenge and critique leadership, they rarely step into it willingly. That's not to say they would make great leaders, but they aren't the first people others turn to step up. Strife, for instance, isn't someone who barks orders or takes charge of the group. That's not to say he couldn't if pushed, but he's just not that guy. Would he be a great leader? Would he be a good leader even? Based on what I saw in Darksiders Genesis, I'd say he would honestly make an okay leader. His instincts tend to be right more than they're wrong, and his pragmatic approach and willingness to use less than savory means to accomplish his missions only stands to increase the team's odds for success, similar to Death. But unlike Death, Strife is less likely to use or manipulate his siblings to complete an objective, at least based on how open he was with war in Darksiders Genesis. That is just my interpretation though. Strife could be just like Death in a lot of ways. We're not quite sure yet, we haven't seen him in that leadership position, but I tend to think he's more of a emotions on his sleeves kind of guy, and that he'd be more transparent with everybody. Strife's discernment and adaptability are top notch. These are qualities inherent in great leaders. For Strife, it allows him to see through the propaganda of the Charred Council in the lies of his temporary allies and foes such as Vulgrim, Samael, and the Council itself. But there's only so much you can do with a horseman who's content with the background role. And when you look at what's presented, it's clear that Strife is becoming the horseman's conscience rather than their commander. If he ever took himself and the world around him a little more seriously, he could possibly be leadership material. As is, he seems more content cracking jokes and doing the actual work of upholding the balance. It's possible that his desire to protect humanity will force him to step up into more of a leadership position. It was his words that opened Fury's eyes and triggered her transformation into the protector that she became at the end of Darksiders 3. If his words could motivate that kind of change, then that is some pretty good potential for leadership, all things considered. Alright, so we've made it to the end. We've seen each of the horsemen's positives, their negatives. We've discussed how each will perform possibly in the leadership position. So what is the verdict? Well, here we go. So after looking at all four of the horsemen, who is the leader? Surprisingly, none of them are. Throughout the games, novels, and comics, there is no formal chain of command. Leadership tends to fall to whoever is best suited to the task at hand, or who has the most relevant intel. So far, that's usually Death, but if we break it down, when overwhelming force and battlefield tactics and leadership are needed, war will naturally take point. When experience, knowledge, and strategy matters most, the others typically refer to Death. When discipline and focus are required, Fury steps forward to keep the group on track. And when someone needs to question the plan before it goes horribly wrong, Strife is usually the first to speak up. If I had to pick one today, like if you put a gun to my head, I would have to say Death. But in the long run, I think one of the others will probably step up. If I had to predict who will lead them by the end of Darksiders 4, I'd say Fury due to how much she's evolved into her protector role on top of her desire to lead the team. But hell, maybe they really don't need one. It seems to be working out just fine for them, so far anyway. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you all don't agree, let me know in the comments down below. Who is your pick to be the leader of the 4 Horsemen and why? And heck, just tell me, let me know who your favorite horseman is overall. I'm definitely interested in you guys' opinion on this. Do you think the team even needs a leader? Like I said, it seems it's working out for them. Do you think they could do better with a leader? Do you think they'll do worse with a leader? Do you think they'd be fighting all the time like siblings typically do? Let's talk about it in the comments below. So I appreciate you guys. It's been a pleasure making this video. Hope you all have a great day. If you can, on the way out, leave a like on the video. Also, a comment will help. Share the video and watch another by yours truly. You can also support the channel by becoming a patron over on Patreon. Supporting there allows me to create more awesome Darksiders and Legacy of Kain content. So if you guys can, help out that way. But I appreciate you all. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. But till next time, everybody, peace.